Imagine that you were traveling to a guru. Yes, this is the rabbi talking about going to see a guru. Going to see a guru off in the Himalayas, the mountains of Tibet, wherever it is, and you're seeking out the meaning of life from this guru. And you go on the whole trek up the mountain, you get to the cave, you go through the purification process, whatever it is, and finally you get your meeting with the guru. And you ask the guru for the meaning of life. And he pulls out a scroll. And he says to you, my child, there are 3 great truths that you must live your life by. Truth number 1, what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. Truth number 2, always trust your feelings. And truth number 3, life is a battle between good people and evil people. My son, my daughter, these are the 3 truths you should live your life by. Now, if you're anything like me, and you heard these 3, so to speak, truths told to you, you would say you're out of your mind. That is against everything I believe in. Everything I've always been told is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The deeply Jewish idea, the idea of adversity makes us stronger. Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam, a righteous person falls 7 times and still gets up. Deeply Jewish idea. The second truth, always trust your feelings. You know, I have ups and downs in life. And I can't always trust that what I feel is accurate, is what is the ultimate truth, or what is how I should perceive things. I can't trust that. And life is a battle between good people and evil people. People live in absolutes. Everyone's either good or evil. There's not a spectrum in the world. There's not different opinions. There's not different thoughts. Yet this is what is taught so often to people in this world. And unfortunately, is being taught in our schools, on our college campuses. This is what's being taught. And this is actually, this parable, this metaphor, if you will, is the introduction in a very fascinating book called The Coddling of the American Mind by Greg Lukoff and Jonathan Haidt. And they go on to say how this has led to the American mind diminishing. Because people are being taught in school, what doesn't kill you makes you weaker. Run away from adversity. If something offends you, go away. If something doesn't speak to you, it's wrong. If something challenges you, maybe that's not how you should be looking at things. And always trust your feelings. If you feel intimidated by something, if you feel like something offends you, it's got to be wrong. It's got to be something that you need to run away from. And life is absolutes, good and evil. The people that I agree with, they're good. The people I disagree with, they're evil. Those liberals, they're all a bunch of godless, amoral, tree-hugging men who want to be women, women who want to be men. That's what they all are. Those conservatives, they're all a bunch of MAGA, racist, fascist, heartless people who want the Fourth Reich here in America. Right? Whatever side you're on, the other side's evil. It's all absolutes, good and evil. Not them, not them. I can't listen to their ideas. I can't talk to them. Yet this is unfortunately what we see so often in our world today. You know, I grew up in a place called Atlanta, Georgia. You ever heard of it? South of the Ohio River, down the original Deep South. And growing up in Atlanta in the 90s and 80s when I was growing up, it was very interesting, and it's still very much so today. And that is because we were essentially taught that the war for northern aggression is still going on, right? I think you call it the Civil War up here, right? Right? The Civil War is still happening, and they would take us to Stone Mountain, which was this. You've heard of Mount Rushmore, right? Well, that's Stone Mountain of the West. And I say that only half joking because the same sculptor who did Stone Mountain was the one who then did Mount Rushmore. But Stone Mountain is a memorial to the Confederacy. You have Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson riding their horses into battle, and we all went there as children. And they would do this laser light show every year in the springtime. And it had all kinds of songs and all this, and it was great. And there were two highlights of that show. One was inevitably when they played Dixie. And the other one was at the end when they played I'm Proud to Be an American. And they would show the United States in two parts coming back together. And everyone in the audience would go, boo! Right? Like, this is the world I was brought up in down in Atlanta, Georgia. But nowadays, I have to say that there's something that we're all familiar with, and it's a discussion down in Georgia. It's a discussion where my wife grew up in Richmond, Virginia, of removing Confederate statues. In Richmond, my wife grew up, they removed all the Confederate statues on Monument Drive. In Atlanta, there's always discussions of blowing up Stone Mountain or not preserving it or whatever it is. And I think that's wrong, personally, because the Civil War is part of Americans' history. It's part of what made the American people who they are. And if we can't look at a Confederate statue or Stone Mountain or a statue of Robert E. Lee or whatever it is because it offends us, and then we don't have the conversations, and we don't talk about what it was and what it meant, and we don't inquire, in my humble opinion, that's a travesty. Now, parenthetically, I'll share with you something fascinating that happened right after October 7th, 2023. And that is that before the whole world decided that they were anti-Semitic, or just revealed they were anti-Semitic, you remember that a lot of countries were lighting up different edifices in their countries with the flag of Israel. One such edifice was the Arch of Titus, right? The Arch of Titus is the arch that King Titus, the Roman king, built after he destroyed the Second Temple and sent us, the Jewish people, into exile. He went and built the Arch of Titus to memorialize the destruction of Jerusalem, the destruction of Judah, of Israel. And it was fascinating that that got lit up with an Israeli flag. Would I, as a Jew, ever advocate for the Arch of Titus to be torn down? It was an arch built to celebrate our destruction as a people. The great Panovich Rav, who transplanted his yeshiva from Lithuania to Bnei Brak, literally when Rommel, Yamach Shemo, was a few sand dunes away ready to invade Israel. And he laid the foundation stone for his yeshiva, and it became one of the preeminent yeshivas of the world until today. When the Panovich Rav went on a fundraising mission to Rome, he got there on a rainy, stormy night. And he said to his driver, he said, before you take me to my hotel, I need to go to the Arch of Titus. He said, Rabbi, it's late, it's rainy, why don't you just wait for the morning? He said, no, I need to go to the Arch of Titus. Fine. So the driver takes him to the Arch of Titus, dark, rainy night. The saintly rabbi gets out of the car. He looks up at the arch, and he says in Yiddish, he says, Titus, ich bin dur. Titus, I am here. But where are you? You're gone. Ancient Rome, gone. It's a bunch of memorials. But the Jewish people lived on. And we can look at that Arch of Titus, and the Roman people can look at the Arch of Titus and tell the story of the fact that there was once an emperor that tried to destroy the Jewish people, yet they are still here. That's how we look at things that challenge us. We don't tear it down so that we never tell the story, so we never have the conversation. I just heard a story today. Brad Schlang and I studied together every Tuesday, and he told me a story not realizing at the time it was going to be part of my topic for tonight. He told me that when the new president was appointed at Oberlin University, there was a delegation from the Federation that went down to meet with her. And she said a very telling line. She said, our students are interested in learning about different ideas as long as they're not too different than their own. And yes, Oberlin might be a little extreme in this regard, but unfortunately, that's the culture in the world today. That's the culture on so many college campuses. That if something offends you, if something's too far off from what you believe, we're not going to study it. If we have a professor who has a different slant on things than the majority of our student body, we're canceling him. It used to be that our universities were places for higher learning, to challenge you, to challenge your thought, to challenge who you were. Now, no, we coddle the American mind. I want to read you an excerpt from a fascinating speech that I saw. This was the commencement address given at Cardigan High School by John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. In that speech, he said to the students, one of which was his son, which is why he was speaking at a high school commencement. He said, "Now the commencement speakers will typically also wish you good luck and extend good wishes. I will not do that, and I'll tell you why. From time to time in the years to come, I hope that you will be treated unfairly, so that you will come to value justice. I hope that you will suffer betrayal, so that you will come to understand the importance of loyalty. Sorry to say, but I hope you will be lonely from time to time, so that you don't take friends for granted. I wish you bad luck, again, from time to time, so that you will be conscious of the role of chance in life and understand that your success is not completely deserved and that the failure of others is not completely deserved either. And when you lose, as you will from time to time, I hope every now and then your opponent will gloat over your failure. It is a way for you to understand the importance of sportsmanship. I hope you'll be ignored, so you know the importance of listening to others. And I hope you will have just enough pain to learn compassion. Whether I wish these things or not, they're going to happen. And whether you benefit from them or not will depend upon your ability to see messages in your misfortune. But the problem is, so much of our world today is people siloing themselves off and echo chambers, whether digitally or in real life, only interacting with people whom they agree with. Because God forbid our thoughts and our ideals and our principles should be challenged by others. God forbid. And this has become very personal in my life. I can think of a number of examples. As many of you know, we lived in Cincinnati for 8 years before we moved up here to Cleveland. And in Cincinnati, there was a lady that we were very close with. She was part of our family. She didn't have much family of her own. In fact, I think she had almost no family left, but she was part of our family. And even after we moved up here to Cleveland, she would still come to visit periodically. She would make the drive up here from Cincinnati. COVID came, she took it very seriously, so we didn't see her for 10 years because of COVID. And even now that the world is lightened up, we don't hear from her a lot. And I reach out from her from time to time. She's like, "Oh, sorry, I haven't been in touch." But recently, in a pre-Rosh Hashanah exchange we had over email, she basically admitted that I'm not really comfortable spending time with you anymore because we see the world so differently. Do you think that's what the Almighty wants from us? Not to spend time with people, especially our only closest thing we have to family, because they see the world different from us? And the truth is, it's even more personal than this for me. My mother has 2 siblings who all have kids and grandkids. That's the big side of our family. My father's one of 3. And on that side of the family, we didn't grow up with any cousins. It was just me and my siblings. Now one of my father's brothers has passed away. There's just one brother left. His parents have passed on, my grandparents. So the whole family is, Him, my father, their families, that's it. Very small. Over the past year or two, he doesn't come for Shabbos dinner anymore. He doesn't come to family occasions anymore. Because, hate to admit it, but my father and many of my family members vote Republican, and he votes Democrat. So he can't spend time with people who are Republicans anymore. His only family left in the world! They vote different than me. So I can't come to Shabbos dinner anymore. I can't take it anymore. That's where we've come to in this world? We can't sit at a table with people who we think differently than? We can't have conversations? We can't interact? That's not the way it's supposed to be. As many of you know, several weeks ago, there was a very influential person named Charlie Kirk who passed away. I don't know if you heard about it. He was unfortunately assassinated in cold blood. In fact, after he was killed, a notice went out that as a rabbi, if you didn't at least mention him, you might get your smicha taken away, because everyone was talking about it. Charlie Kirk influenced the world in a very interesting way. You know what he did? He went to college campuses, he pitched a tent, he sat down in that tent, and he put up a sign that said, "Prove me wrong." And he invited people who he knew disagree with him to come and do what? Have a conversation. He didn't yell at them. He didn't taunt them. He didn't call them names. None of that. He was always very patient, and he sat there and he talked to them. And because that process was so effective, he lost his life. He was shot down in cold blood. This is the approach of level-minded people, of people who see the world in the proper way. I want to read you a social media post from someone named Shai Davidai. I don't know if you know who Shai Davidai is, but if not, you should look him up. He's a fascinating person. He was a professor at Columbia University before October 7th. He's Israeli. And after October 7th, he started speaking out about all the anti-Semitism that was happening on the Columbia University campus, and it cost him his job. And since then, his profession now is advocating for the Jewish people, advocating for Israel, and advocating for people to get along and have conversations. And he is socially on the liberal side of things. Yet he posted this after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I liked Charlie Kirk. You know why? Because he was willing to talk to anyone. His arguments, many of which I deeply disagreed with, forced me to think. May his memory be for a blessing. Keep having conversations. That's what we need to do. Not silo ourselves off from people who we don't agree with, we know have different political views, religious views, whatever views. No. We have conversations. We build relationships. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a lot of contention now in the United States Congress. You know about that? You know, they just shut down the whole government a few weeks ago because of it. And it's hard for the two parties in America to get along and to compromise and to move forward on almost anything. You know, this wasn't always the case. There was a shift that took place in the United States Congress in the 90s. You know what that was? Until the 90s, it used to be that when Congress was in session, congressmen and senators lived in Washington, D.C. That meant they were there 7 days a week, and they lived there. And you know what else it meant? That meant they belonged to the same country clubs. They lived in the same neighborhoods. They would fight like cats and dogs on the floor of the Congress and the floor of the Senate, and they would go out and have a beer afterwards at night. Starting in the 90s, the culture became that congressmen who have to run for re-election every 2 years would only be in Washington from Tuesday to Thursday, and they'd be back in their districts Friday through Monday. And all the business of Congress happens between Tuesday and Thursday every week. Because of that, it meant there was no social interaction whatsoever between the Congress, between the different parties, between the different people. And I believe that's one of the key reasons we see what we see today. You can't have a conversation. You have no relationship. They used to have a relationship. Now they have no relationship. This is such a fundamental Jewish idea, right? Such a fundamental Jewish idea of getting along with others, even when they're different. I'll tell you something fascinating. Who here has ever heard of Hillel and Shammai? Right? You've probably heard of them. Two of the most famous rabbis of the Talmud. Not only that, but their academies have almost the greatest number of disputes of anyone in the Talmud. And they have some very fundamental disputes. They have disputes on marital law. They have disputes on kosher laws. They have disputes on everything. Yet the Mishnah tells us, even though they didn't agree on everything when it came to marital law, the children from the school of Shammai still married the children from the school of Hillel. And the children from the school of Hillel still married the children from the school of Shammai. And even though they didn't agree on many things when it came to the laws of kosher, the students from the house of Hillel still ate in the houses of the students of the house of Shammai, and the students of the house of Shammai still ate in the houses of the students of the house of Hillel. Because they said, yes, we have an academic dispute, we have an ideological dispute. And yes, you might say something's kosher that I say is not kosher, and I might say something's kosher that you say is not kosher, but I know we're both acting for the sake of heaven, and therefore I'm going to eat in your house and you're going to eat in my house. I'm going to marry my children to your children and you're going to marry your children to my children. That's the Jewish way. And you look at the Talmud, which is the basis for everything we are as a Jew. I mean, what other religion makes their fundamental text a book of arguments? That's what it is. It's 2,000 plus pages of arguments, of debates, of conversations. Because that's what it means to be a Jew. And as we live in this world where so many are going so far astray from it, and dare I say many in our community just as well, we need to be that light unto the nations to say, no, we're going to have these conversations. We're going to talk to people that we don't necessarily agree with. It's going to challenge us. As Chief Justice Roberts said, it's going to make us better, it's going to make us stronger, and dare I say it'll make us smarter if we do such things. But here's the real reason that I'm nervous about what's happening today. There's a fascinating book that came out in 1997 called The Fourth Turning by Neil Howell and William Strauss. Anyone ever read it? Fourth Turning? The book talks about how history goes in 4 cycles. How there's the first turning, which is after there was some kind of crisis. It's when the nation comes out of the crisis and they're on a high and everyone's optimistic and there's a collective and there's rebuilding and there's strong institutions and there's weak individualism and everyone's working together. That's the first turning. That's the high. And then the next generation comes along, the children of those people, and that's the second turning, the awakening. What happens then? The response to their parents, they're idealistic and rebellious, and institutions start to feel stifling, and people crave meaning and authenticity. And then we come into the third turning, which is the unraveling, which is where people are cynical, divided, self-focused, institutions weaken, social trust declines, and people stop talking to one another. And then the fourth turning is the crisis, the revolution, the war, whatever it is. I don't want our world to come to a fourth turning. And I believe that if we as the Jewish people can be the light unto the nations that we're supposed to be, and work to reach out to people that we might not agree with, and still befriend them, still have those conversations, still have them over, that could quite possibly save the world. And in truth, we offer an opportunity to do that regularly through this organization. I bet you didn't know it, but you're really just watching a big infomercial here tonight. Partners in Torah, Partners Cleveland, we bring people together, bringing Jews together through the learning of Torah. Different people who wouldn't necessarily interact, but there's one thing we can all agree with, is we all came from the Torah. The Jewish people all started with the Torah. We can sit down and study it together. It can be common ground for us to start those conversations with. So many of you in this room tonight participate with us regularly. Many of you don't. And I know who you are, and I know where you live, and but I'll encourage you that if you don't participate regularly, pull out your phone, go to TorahCleveland.com, and click on either Learn with Us, if you want to be a student, click on Teach with Us, if you have what it takes to teach. And do your part. Do your part to bring the Jewish people together. Do your part to reach out to people who you might disagree with. And do your part to quite possibly save the world. I thank you all for coming. I thank you for listening.